All right, welcome back, coaches, to 10 Questions With. We're really excited to have our guest on today, David Aardsma. He's our rehab pitching coordinator with the Jays. He was a coordinator of player development in 18 and 19, 10-year big league career, and over a span of 08 and 09, he had back-to-back 30 save seasons. I think it was 69 in total. We're really excited to have him today to answer some questions on pitching, so thanks for joining us, Dave.
No, thank you for having me. I love the opportunity to answer questions. Not often do we get, I get a whole lot of questions down here during this time, so this is fun. I love doing this.
All right, man. Well, the format is I'm just going to fire questions at you. They've been sent in from coaches across the country, and we're looking forward to your answers. So the first question comes from Peter. I have a player whose arm, 15 years old, whose arm lags behind and ends up using a little too much arm in his delivery. Any good drills, advice to help young pitchers with the timing of their mechanics? If you could answer the question like you were talking to the player, that would be awesome.
All right. Well, Peter, thank you for the question. Whoever the player is, I'll try to answer it. I'm going to talk to them. But, you know, one of the most important things you do as a young player is to make sure that the timing we call it arm cocking. So right when your front foot lands and you have we call it front foot contact, you want your arm basically right up top. So we call it inside 90. So if you have a little imaginary line, you measure it inside 90. So right at 90, outside 90, inside 90. You can either have your hand supinated, which is right here, or pronated, which is facing second base. Ideally, you want it to have a little supinated facing third base. So I don't really care how you necessarily get your arm to that position, unless you're leaning forward and really get your elbow up and you get really horizontally adducted here. Abducted, sorry, I always say it wrong, adducted, abducted. But if you get your elbow really high in this position, that's not good. But try to keep your chest tall, get your arm up in this position. It could be really long, could be really short, but as long as you're in this position when you land. And if you're in that position, your arm timing's it's on time. Sometimes you can shorten it up, you can get a little longer. If you're not in this position and you're landing and you're still in this position, do drills that start here. So right when they land, right here, practice landing right here. Make this just their normal part of their day. They should do 50, 100 of those where they just land right there, where they just, boom, just practice this. Get them in their mirror when they're home. In between games of Fortnite after they get died and they're like 98th place, land right here. Just do 5, 10 of them. So they just in their mind, they're always, the second that foot lands, and hopefully you can hear that, lands, my elbow's right there. And then you can do some short drills where they actually throw from this position. You can have them with no ball and have them toss the ball and then catch it right here and then throw. Obviously in those drills, don't have them throw too hard, but practice that and then film them. Constantly film them and show them where they're at so they know it. It's one thing to say, I feel it. It's another thing to feel and see. One thing we do with our players with Blue Jays all the time is film. And then so they can connect a feeling with what's actually happening.
Awesome, man. Next question comes from Charles. How does a pitcher find their natural arm slot? Is there an ideal arm slot for pitchers to use to help prevent injury?
Ideal is a tricky word, okay? Charles, it's one of those things, ideal matters to the player, first and foremost, and ideal is where that natural arm slot is. So that goes to the other question. The best way to find the natural arm slot, get them at shortstop, throw a backhanded ball to them, roll backhanded ball, or if they're third base, or if they're lefty, I don't know, I don't care about lefties. No, find a way to get them to backhand the ball and have to plant on the back leg and just throw. Film it from basically get between them and first base, have somebody just roll them a ball, and naturally don't let them crow hop, don't let them do this, have them backhand and just fire it across the diamond. They're going to find their arm slot. And that will show them what their natural arm slot is because it's a reactionary throw. They don't have time to think about it. It's just grab ball, throw ball. Don't let them come in on it and give a little fancy, Almar, little play. Get them just in that natural little backhand, throw the ball, film it. That'll be their natural arm slot. Normally, what we always want to do is if I'm facing the catcher, this will be the natural arm slot. This is generally, honestly, when you watch almost every pitcher in the league behind the side, like Brad Ziegler, who's not even playing, or Pat Neshek, you're going to be right here. but then depending on where your shoulders are, goes where their arm slot is. So everybody goes, oh man, I'm low like sidearm arm slot. No, you're low, but your shoulders and your arm are generally always in the same position. Arm is usually always even with your shoulder line, and shoulders are usually a little tilted, so you're a little high 3/4. That's pretty normal. But then guys that are over the top, like the old back in the day, Okajima with the Red Sox, the hat used to fly off. He was like this, like straight up. If you actually just watch their shoulder line, watch their arm, that's generally going to be where everybody is, and then it's where are you on that plane. So backhand ball is shortstop. You'll see where their natural arm slot is. I bet it's in that spot.
Awesome, man. Next question comes from Sebastian. What type of arm care routines do you work on with pitchers in the Blue Jays organization?
So Sebastian, this is a tough question because I don't want to give away some of our secrets, because the trick is that we created an arm care program for our players. So I don't want to give away too much of that. One thing you can do, so I was finding the best way to convey this over time. One thing we do is we focus on the arm, we focus on the shoulder, we focus obviously on the rotator cuff, scap, every angle of the shoulder we can. We do it in a lot of different ways. One of the best things you can do is if you go on Google and you actually search Job's Arm Care. So Job's, Dr. Job, Jobe, he was a very famous doctor. He was the first one to actually do the Tommy John, like right here, that nice little slit on Tommy John. He was actually the doctor that performed it, and he created the surgery with Tommy John. So he created an arm care program that's generally all the arm care programs that's ever existed since then was through his program, and it just variations off of that. So if you search Job's Arm Care on Google, the second link, which is youthpitching.com, gives you some great arm care ideas and suggestions, many of which we do with our pitchers. I'm not actually saying that, but many of which we do with our pitchers. They include bands and lightweights. One of the biggest things to focus on, though, is lightweight reps. Don't just knock them out. I'm not sitting here, I'm just going 1, 2, 3. I'm setting my scap every drill, coming up, hold, come up, hold. Take your time with them. The most important thing you can do is take your time. If we sit there and just do them just to do them, why are we wasting our time? So take your time, take a breath. It's going to take a little bit. It's going to get tedious. It's going to get super boring for young players, super boring for big leaguers, even though we know we have to do it. And we tend to cheat too and just try to get it done sometimes. And a good trainer catches us and tells us to take a breath and relax and just get it done. So youthpitching.com, Job's Arm Care, man, you can't miss.
That's great, man. That's awesome. Next question comes from Brian. I follow your work on topvelocity.net. I know you have recently become a Top Velocity 3-time certified coach. How do you implement these training methods with your current players, and would you recommend this style of training to youth pitchers at the age of 12?
I would absolutely recommend that style of pitching. I've tried to educate myself in many different ways, gone through driveline certification, gone through Top Velocity certification. I trained with USA Weightlifting. I got certification during this whole quarantine thing. Got another certification called TPI, which is understanding your body and how it moves and how to assess the body. But directly with Top Velocity, I would 100% suggest it. One of the big things they do is with the triple extension is just understanding how your body moves, understanding the kinetic chain, understanding how getting bigger, stronger, faster, more mobile helps you throw. For a 12-year-old, the only thing I would suggest is you can start training, but understand that they're still 12. They're still developing. Their growth weights might not even be fully done yet. Like let these kids, let them do a lot of body weight stuff. Get in good positions. Get mobile. Learn how the lower half affects the upper half. So you can get in that training. That's one of the biggest things they focus on is the lower half and how it affects you to throw hard. What we always see with our pitchers is guys that generally have really good lower halves generally have very good upper halves. And that generally leads to success and health. So we always focus on health and success. It doesn't really help if we have, a Nate Pearson throwing 104 for 5 games and then he's hurt. That generally doesn't help. That's knock on wood, and hopefully that never happens. And sometimes you can't ever, it doesn't matter what you do, you can't predict injuries. But sometimes when guys don't when you see their deliveries not lining up, you don't see them using the kinetic chain well, you see issues. Top velocity system does a lot to really help their players, and we do implement a lot of the ideas that he has created, because we understand that's how guys move. That's how pitchers, really highly successful, healthy pitchers, all tend to move the same way. So we use a lot of their ideas along with a lot of others, though.
Great, Ed. Next question comes from Ryan. I have come to learn the importance of developing hip to shoulder separation during the delivery for not only building velocity, but also protecting the arm. Can you discuss the importance of hip to shoulder separation and some training drills to help with hip to shoulder separation, and how to delay hip rotation until after front foot strike?
Ryan, that's now we're getting into real questions. We're getting into stuff that we're really working on with our players. This is higher level stuff. So for everybody out there that doesn't understand, that isn't as diving into it as deep as Ryan, or doesn't have players that they're as worried about as Ryan is with hip to shoulder separation. A lot of younger players, we're not really as worried about it as we are with professionals, college or upper level high school players. Hip to shoulder separation is the idea of when at front foot strike. There's two times we kind of measure it. Right at front foot strike, where's their hip? How open is it to the catcher compared to where their arm is, and how close to the catcher it is? So the idea is we want that front hip as open as possible, facing the catcher as we can at front foot strike, and we want the arm basically perpendicular to the plate. So we want your upper body, your torso facing third base or facing first base, lefty or righty, but your hip facing the catcher. But the key with this is we want that front foot in line with the catcher, if not a little bit close. That's the trick. A lot of times people open that front hip and the front leg is wide open and their knee is flying open, and that throws everything off. That messes up the whole kinetic chain. That's hip to shoulder separation, but you're faking it. That's not real. And that will cause a lot of injuries, a lot of stress on your shoulders and your elbow. So we work a lot with that with our players. That's one of the biggest issues we see with our professional athletes is the back leg moving down the mound and getting a really good glute load, a good hip tilt, and hip to shoulder separation. The guys that generally throw the hardest, the most healthy, have both. So one of the big drills we do, I didn't get this. The second way we measure it is at full arm cocking. So we want you at full arm cocking, right? And that's what we want, the hip to shoulder separation. And then the second way we measure it is when does that hip get fully forward to the catcher? And then where's your arm in place? So if your hip's facing the catcher and your arm is facing the catcher and you're directly there's zero hip to shoulder separation. Some guys, actually, their arm is in front of their hip. That's not good. That means the arm's taking a lot more stress, and you really didn't develop the lower half as well. That was basically me. But I had a lot of other things that overcompensated for that. A lot of guys that are a little behind it, and then are really, really good ones, like we talked about Nate Pearson, or we talked about Eric Pardinho in the past, or some of our really a ton of successful guys in our organization. They're way back and they're perpendicular to the catcher, fully when their hips wide open, right facing the catcher. So one of the drills we do, work on mobility a lot with that. We'll put a band around their hip, pull their hip flexor forward, and then rotate their shoulders against it. Just mobilizing that hip, that your back right hip if you're righty, back left hip if you're lefty. We want that flexion of that hip to be as mobile as possible. More range of motion means they can get into that hip more. Then one of the other things we also do is just build leg strength. Jumps, a lot of drives, understanding how to get off the rubber fast and aggressive, landing in that front foot with a lot of power, a lot of aggressiveness right in that front foot tends to get your hips open a lot more. So those are a lot of things we focus on with our players.
Awesome, Ed. Next question. You just kind of talked about lower half. Rusty's asking, everybody's always talking about what are things I can do for my arm, strength of my arm, drills, jobs you alluded to earlier. His question is more about, can you talk about the importance of the lower half for a pitcher and how that can directly affect his arm?
Yeah, so the lower half starts everything. The only thing connected to the ground is the lower half, right? Your back leg. Everything we look at, it doesn't matter what we do, we start with the lower half. Yeah, we might look at a video and we might notice the arm because it's just, you can't miss it. That's what a lot of people focus on first is, sorry, they end up focusing on the arm because that's what you see and that's what everybody talks about, is the arm, the arm, the arm. But if you don't correct the lower half first, it doesn't matter what the arm is doing. If the lower half has a big issue, a big red flag, by correcting that red flag, you will affect the kinetic chain, which goes up to your arm, which might actually make the arm change that you wanted. A lot of times we see somebody landing, they're outside of 90 and their arm's delayed and their lower half is just crap. And so you correct the lower half, you correct that kinetic chain, then their timing's on because they don't need to, they're not adjusting for anything. They're not compensating for anything. Major League Baseball players, Major League pitchers in particular, are elite compensators. So when something's not going right, they find out something else to do to make it work. The guys that don't compensate tend to not make it because they don't adjust. Because everybody has a problem. No one's perfect when they're pitching delivery. Everybody has a little flaw here and there. Now we think a couple guys are really close to perfect. A couple guys are really close to perfect. Actually, one of our youngest guys in our organization is, but no one is perfect. So what we do is we adjust for it and we try to compensate for it. So the idea is to take away those compensations, fix the problem, get the lower half strong, get it healthy, get it mobile, get it moving powerful, man. Get these kids to have powerful lower halves. I don't want to see nice, perfect, really smooth moving down the mound and not like being aggressive, man. Get your lower half aggressive so your upper half doesn't have to be aggressive. If your upper half can just go along for the ride, you have a really good chance of throwing hard and being healthy, you know? And so what I see is guys that have, you see the lower half moving really nice and slow and smooth and it looks beautiful. And then their upper half is like, and they're doing the big finish, the Fernando Rodney finish. But for me, that all it is putting stress on your upper half. It's putting stress on your arm. It's a ticking time bomb. Watch the lower half. Get the lower half getting really mobile. Get them riding their back leg. Get them in a really good glute load, ride that back leg, get that hip tilt, go into a really aggressive front leg, and get stable. One of the biggest problems we see, too, is that front knee moves forward. When they land at front foot strike, and you see that land, the foot fully hit the ground, that knee should not move forward. So that knee needs to be strong, stable, and then they have something to throw against, and they use all that power to throw against it.
For sure, man. Next question comes from Blair. Are there any pitchers/mechanical breakdowns that athletes can watch and emulate?
Blair, that's a tough question. So I saw a question beforehand, and I've been working on this. I've been trying to figure this out. My only issue is we don't put our mechanical breakdowns for our players online. We keep them internal. We keep them in-house because that's something that is like really unique to us. That we kind of say, like, we don't want other teams seeing that stuff. That is a competitive advantage for the Toronto Blue Jays. I think we're really good at it, and so we don't want people to see that stuff. There are some really good websites, though, that do show mechanical breakdowns on YouTube. And there's, like we talked about a little bit earlier with topvelocity.net, they show a lot of mechanical breakdowns. I was a part of a lot of those mechanical breakdowns when I was developing my understanding of biomechanics, understanding how the body moves. Brent Porcio is amazing at that stuff. I have Driveline that has some good stuff. I don't know if they really do some mechanical breakdowns of players, but they do some really good stuff with biomechanics with like suits and kinetic breakdowns where they really show the players and they break down the players that they're developing. So there's a couple good resources there, but again, I would first have you go to the Top Velocity YouTube sites and check out some of theirs because I truly believe that Brent was one of the best in the business at breaking down deliveries. And I do know he took down some of his big league stuff, but I think he does have a lot of guys in house that he still breaks down, and he does it very well and articulate and understand that exactly what he's saying. It's pretty easy.
Awesome. Next question comes from Josh. My son is a two-way player, but a better pitcher. Is there anything he would do in hitting that could ever jeopardize his pitching mechanics or risk injuries?
Always pitch. No, no. Play two positions as long as humanly possible. And there's nothing hitting wise that will break down your pitching delivery. A lot of things are actually really similar. A couple of years ago, I worked with Josh Donaldson when he was coming back, when he was rehabbing, and we worked exclusively on his arm path and throwing, and basically, like, I worked with him as a pitcher, even though being a third baseman. We spent a lot of time together, and one of the interesting things that we really found when we were breaking down his throwing mechanics, it directly mirrored his hitting mechanics. When he backhanded the ball from third base, like I talked about earlier, backhanded the ball from shortstop will show you exactly what your natural movements are. When he backhanded the ball, we were able to still frame it, and he was back in this back position. It was the exact same position with his lower half and his upper half as he did his hitting. Obviously, when you start moving forward, it's a little different because your arm has a different path and hitting has a whole different path. But it's amazing, the similarities. Develop them, play them in every position. The only thing I would say is a lot of times when people are being position player mindset is their throwing program goes to crap. They don't throw. They don't do normal playing catch. They sit there and they just throw the ball and I'm doing it basically because they told me to do it. I'm here so I don't get fined type of idea. Have a big league mindset, big league pitching mindset throwing program. Own it. Take pride in it. Don't let somebody tell you that you're taking it too serious. Be the guy everybody goes, man, this throwing program is like intense and it's like serious. Like, should be. You shouldn't have to throw 500 throws, but every single throw should have a purpose behind it, should have a goal behind it. You should know ahead of time. You don't make it up as you go. Have a plan. Develop a throwing program so it's, when your light days are, your moderate days are, your intense days are. Develop them around when you're going to throw in your games, you're going to pitch. But nothing else should have a problem. It's just the only issue is we see a lot of guys that are like transitioning from like shortstop or center fielder to pitching. Their throwing programs are they're not ideal. They just take them too easy, too lax.
Next question comes from Dennis. I coach house league, little league. At my level, it's a miracle if pitchers can even find the strike zone consistently. How can you build confidence with these kids?
So that's a tough question, Dennis. I mean, that's one of those things that is a question probably every little league coach out there is trying to answer, unless you have some little superstar on your hands. One of the biggest things I've talked about this with some of our coaches with my kids who are not the best little leaguers in the world, is understanding what a win is for them. Change what a win is every single day. So we talk about the Blue Jays, win the day, conquer today, conquer the moment, be in the moment. So what is a win to a little leaguer? It might be a strike. It might not be a strike. If they can't throw strikes, that's not a win. So change what the concept is. Let them understand what is the goal. Is your day today, is it going to go out there, have a plan, be focused? Like, is it going to take a breath when you get on the mound? Make it simple. Make it something where you look at their goal is to look at the catcher and come set every single time, and then have a good lift your leg and deliver a ball. Maybe your goal is to not get down, to not get sad. Maybe it is a strike. Maybe that's your goal, is one strike on every batter, or whatever it is. Make the goal achievable, but make it where they still have to work for it. They have to accomplish something. Maybe it's being a great teammate. Maybe it's just going out there and like rooting for your team, being like stand behind it. Like just being a great teammate, being present. Like make these things accountable, but hold them to it. So that becomes the win and not the results. So a lot of things we focus on, like we always focus on results. Did I get the guy out? Did I go out there and have a scoreless inning? Did I strike 3 guys out? That's my goal. I don't control that. The second the ball is out of my hand, I do not control whether it's a ball or a strike. I don't control if it's a hit or if it's a strikeout. I don't control what the umpire says. I've got zero control of it. It can go right down the middle and call the ball all day long. If we get in computer umpires, yeah, the computer might malfunction at the ball. So, okay. But did I control what I wanted to control? Did I do my delivery? Did I control my breath? Did I know the situation? Did I understand where I was supposed to back up? Did I know all those things? Did I know the hitter? Did I know that it's a 0-1 count and he can't hit a slider, so I'm going to nail this slider right here? Did I control all of those things? And then did I execute the pitch to the best I can execute it? So that's what we focus on. We don't focus on results. If we do all those things, results will come because our guys are nasty and that's what they do. But focus on something create a plan, and make it as simple as possible. Mindset, being a good teammate, controlling their breath, controlling the delivery, then that's a win. Measure it. Make sure that, hey, you nailed it 7 out of 10 times, man. That's a win. Like, that is, yes, that is today. We did it. And then if you do those things over time, as they get a little better, you change what your goal is.
That's great, man. Last one comes from Dan. Is there anything you wish elite amateur baseball pitching coaches, high school or college, would do better as a group?
Oh, not lumping them all into one giant group, but let's lump them all into one giant group. I would say throwing programs. One of the biggest overall things that we even see in pro ball is throwing programs. That's why one of our biggest goals in spring training was throwing program. I'm going to say this 10 more times: throwing program, throwing program, throwing program. Owning a really good throwing program sets the basis for being a really good accountable pitcher. Our best players, the best players I've ever played with in my career, and I've played with the best of the best of the best. Like Greg Maddox had a great throwing program. Like Roger Clemens had a great throwing program. Like these guys, you go down the list, really good players tend to have really good routines. And routines for pitchers, we have a lot of other things going on, but really, like our normal day, the only thing we can really own is our throwing program. Like if you're a starting pitcher, yeah, you throw every 5 days. For those other 4, throwing program. That's your work. That's your real work. And we play, 162 games in the big leagues. Well, maybe not this year, but we play 162 games. So even the best reliever only throws 75. So you're more often than not, you're not playing. So that day, that's your throwing program. So high school, own a throwing program. Get these kids understanding, again, like I said earlier, what is a light, medium, heavy work day or intense work day. Own it. Have a plan with every single throw. Know exactly what you're trying to do. And we never throw to warm up. We warm up. We get ready to throw. And our throwing, man, that is our work. That is our day. And if you can have a really good throwing program, chances are you're going to be a really good pitcher.
That's awesome, man. It's a great way to finish. We really appreciate you doing this. Great answers across the board. So thanks so much, man, for stopping by.
No, thank you for having me. I love the questions. Appreciate it.